Welcome, welcome, welcome to Zion.
It's great to have you here. Let's talk about Blind Guardian and our earliest history and about the first 4 albums. It's great to have you here, Ronnie, Mark, and obviously good old Tolman.
Hallöchen.
The rest is known, pretty much.
I look familiar at least. Let's start about the very, very beginning, 1984, when Hansi and Andre met for the first time. So how come that you felt from the beginning that maybe we should actually do something together?
Well, we were in the same class at school. Hansi and me became kind of friends
It took a while.
from the beginning. Yeah, I didn't look that metal in the early days, so maybe he was a little bit like, oh, what is this guy? And
He was a fashion guy, you know. I was the obvious metal guy.
yeah, but we went out for drinking a little bit in the morning before school.
And the afternoon, yeah, that changed my mind. a
And
little
then
bit.
he changed his mind and hang out
Did
with
not
me.
convince me 100%, but it was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we had the first trip with school, we did a little bit party, and when we were just a little bit drunk, Hansi started singing King Diamond songs and Merciful Fate stuff and other bands as well. And he was singing so high that I was blown away by his voice. And because he had still this full power, it was not just, it was really a full voice and very high. And I thought, wow, that guy, I should invite for rehearsal. And I always tried to talk him in, and he was like, I'm a guitar player, I want to play guitar. and I said, yeah, well, sorry, mate, but we have 2 guitar players already. Maybe we can arrange something else. And he said, yeah, well, do you have a bass player? I said, no bass. Okay, then I do bass and sing. I said, yeah, perfect, come over. And he was not so much into the idea of doing vocals. He worked himself in. From the beginning, I think even in the first rehearsal, we tried to write a song. It was just natural for us to go for some new ideas and build something that was there from the very first day. And that was maybe the thing that kept our interest over all the years. It was this magic songwriting duo from the beginning, I think.
So Tom, and how did you come in contact with Andre and Hansi back then?
I was on the same school with Andre. I remember me doing a concert as a Kiss cover band with the mask. And Andre, he gave us his amplifier, a Sun amplifier. It was his
To play
good
the
old Sun
playback
amplifier.
or whatever.
Yeah, to play the playback. And I remember him playing with his own band. Was it 04 at this time?
Yeah,
European, I think. Was it?
European?
Whatever.
04? I don't remember the name. Of course, I was there always when they had rehearsals in school, in a classroom after school. They were rehearsing.
You started, then you asked me if you can have guitar lessons.
Right.
Very
Right.
early point.
Right.
So that was the moment when you started coming to our rehearsal room.
Right,
For the
in
guitar
house
lessons.
of your mom, right?
Yeah, that was the
Down
house
in
of
the
my
cellar,
mom.
and there was the drum set from his old drummer. Yeah, and then I was sitting there, and he gave me some lessons. I said, okay, let me try this, and I was like, and he, man, what are you doing there? Forget about that,
No,
You have to keep-
wait, no, not
No?
at that moment. At that moment,
Not at
I
that
really
moment?
tried hard with you.
Okay.
And you were a lazy
about it.
ass, you never rehearsed.
That
You
was
came
right.
1 week later and you couldn't play what I showed you.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you asked, hey Andre, can I do you mind if I sit on the drums and try a little
right,
bit to
yeah.
play on the drums? And this asshole was sitting behind the drums and started playing a rhythm with hi-hat, bass and snare immediately.
Yeah.
And then I said, wow, let's quit your guitar lessons because you have absolutely no talent
Right.
for the guitar, but you are such a talent for the drums. search a drum teacher and go for the lessons there.
Yeah.
And you did this, and it was a wise choice, I think.
And then I took lessons with a jazz drummer for half a year, and then I was always asking, "Hey, can I join your band? Can I join your band?" And he was like, "Thomas, that's a little bit early." I said, "Come on, I give everything. I will practice. I will practice. Can I come to play a little bit? We can
Biggest
see." If
blind rock
he was
roll
like,
history.
"Wow." Yeah. Then Hansi was already at this time in the band, right? And then he was talking to Hansi, and Hansi was like, "I don't know, this guy's so young," and all.
Yeah,
You know,
we have
and
to
stuff
mention
like-
he was 13 when,
Yeah,
we had
right,
when
right.
we had the rehearsals, and when you did the drum
Yeah.
lessons, maybe
Yeah.
14,
Almost 14, right? I started with 13.
Yeah,
and,
so
and-
pretty young.
Yeah, half a year lessons, and then I wanted to get in that band, and I was fighting for that. And then he said, "Okay, let's check him." We did some rehearsals. Hans was like, "I don't know what you talk later, but at the end you gave me."
I just
Yeah.
said, "You're right, Andre. He's stupid."
right. He's stupid, but he can play drums. Let's take him in.
So Marcus, what did you think about the offer to join Blind Guardian as you had your own?
We were not
trance?
Blind Guardian. We were
No,
Lucifer
Yeah,
no,
sorry,
it was
sorry.
Heritage, but it was perfect for me because, as Andre already said, I had my own band at that point, and we recorded a demo, but we were constantly having lineup issues, you know, where we were looking for a singer or a drummer or both, and, you know, it wasn't going anywhere. Most of the time it was like me and the bass player sitting in the rehearsal room and, you know, talking, trying to do something, but if it's only two people, you don't get anywhere. But when he asked me if I wouldn't like to come over and jam, I was like, yeah, I would like to. And I just learned all the songs from the two demos, and we jammed, and it worked. And, you know, the chemistry was right. We had the same attitude, and I obviously loved the songs. So I didn't really have to think long about this. It was the right thing to move on.
I think it's very important that we all had the same mindset as Andre
Yeah.
said about
Yeah.
Toman. The same can be said about you. You
Yeah.
were
Yeah,
the
we were
missing link.
rehearsing. We were rehearsing every day. You know, we didn't talk about this, but we have to do something. It was just natural. You know,
Yeah.
like we rehearsed on whatever Monday and said, "Okay, see you tomorrow."
Yeah.
And it continued. And I think the only days when we might not have rehearsed was on Sundays when we were too hungover.
You mentioned earlier that the first rehearsal where you were involved, you started writing on songs. So did you ever discuss in which direction you wanted to go, or was it, well, we're a metal band, let's try to create heavy metal, or
We had already some songs from my previous band that we were still playing, because otherwise we wouldn't have enough material to rehearse, I think. And so there was already from the guitar riffing and stuff, there was a certain line going through the songs. And then these characteristics of us were there from the beginning. Hansi had from the very first moment his very own style to sing. He was not singing like all the metal singers. Like they all, at that time, they all tried to be high as Kiske, and he was not going that way. So, and Toman, as I said before, had this extraordinary punch, and we didn't realize that we have these characteristics, but somehow by the feeling for the songs we brought it in our music, and we connected it to the melodies we wrote, to the riffs we wrote, and so it grew naturally, just learning by doing. Every song, in my opinion, became a little bit better. We were trying out, and then slowly formed something that became a style. But even with the Battalions and Follow the Blind, I don't consider us that we found our style. We found our style with the Tales.
how was it to work in a real studio? I mean, I remember you gave us some information before, and the producer Kalle Trapp, he really worked with you hard on, for instance,
I mean, for me, it was a mind-blowing experience. I mean, Kalle in general, you know, we may talk about him later, has been a very inspiring person But when doing the vocals, I was in a stressful situation because I had a job at the same time, and I was, traveling from Krefeld to Münster, doing the vocals, and then we did the partying in Münster, and I had to sleep and go back to Krefeld in the morning. But still, I did my performance in a short amount of time. I think I have had like 2 or 3 days for vocals, which was more than you guys had, to say so, because we were on a small budget nonetheless. And Kalle just realized that I did some things incorrect, and he mentioned that. I did not have a sharp S, for example. It was all so he switched that from the demo to the album. He really produced me. That's the difference in comparison to the demos we did, because then I just went in straight, did 1 performance, 2 at the highest, and it was done. In the case of the first album production, I found out more about drop in and drop out, and just doing sections, and then he just told me that some notes were not correct and they had to be corrected, and I paid more attention even to your drum playing a little bit. But mainly he educated me to be a little more aware of what these guys were doing, so that helped a lot. And he produced me into a proper vocalist as well.
Talking about the singing in the studio, compared to the demo days, back then you had not these big chorus arrangements with other guys singing. That came with Battalion a little bit, where Michael Voss and Rolf Köhler were singing. Mm-hmm. Who had the idea to bring them in? Was it Kalle or?
I think it was Kalle as well, yeah. He was really trying to see how he can improve the songs. He was listening to the demos, of course. For him was always the chorus part was the most important part of the song and has to be featured. In metal music, it was not so obvious. Sometimes the songs were just running through, and you could not even find any dynamic changes in a song. And for us, it was okay like this. But for Kalle, he was really pop-orientated thinking, and he said, no, the chorus part is the main focus, and we will really, it needs to catch you. And you have good melodies, so we will feature them, we will do choirs. I think that Kalle, now that we're talking about Kalle, was a really important person for us, because he was so nice as a person. In the moment when a band could fly away because of a little success, he kept us on the ground. And he was giving us some wise thoughts about music business and how to work, how to see it really as a work, not do too much party, but really focus on the recordings. And he kept us on the ground. That was really helpful at that moment, because we were party guys. And if there was any other guy who was more rock and roll, we would go for party, for sure. But in Kalle's studio, we kept working.
Yeah, that's true.
He also introduced other things to us, like playing to a click track, and I think he was the one suggesting to tune down the guitars half a step to get a fuller sound and stuff like that we had no clue about before, because we had no idea what a click track was, and we never thought about changing tunings or anything. We just played our songs, and he tried to improve things. And he said, if you play to a click track, it will be tighter, and the sound will be different if you go that half step down. And I remember he played us some records back from the time. I don't remember what it was, but some other bands did the half step down tuning already, and we liked the sound. It was like, yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, there was always one rule for Kalle. Speed up with the song or forget it. But if you slow down at any point in the song, you can directly start recording again. That's what we had with Battalions of Fear,
Yeah.
because we recorded this album without click track.
I remember we even started rehearsing. When we rehearsed the song before doing Follow, we rehearsed with the click track coming through our vocal PA thingy, so we all heard the click track, and it was very annoying, so at some point you had to use headphones. And we trusted on him being on the click, because we didn't really feel like hearing that cowbell thing all day long.
And nobody wanted to hear the volume of my click track.
No, he did that at one point for like
I heard
a
enough.
split second.
I heard enough of the click over his
Over my headphones.
headphones. Yeah, it was loud enough. It was cool.
Oh, yeah.
So it seems there was a lot of stuff happening in the studio, and even the name of the band was changed back then. How did that evolve?
A lot of people had a misconception about our music. They thought we were doing black metal because of the Lucifers in the name, and when they heard the band's name, they refused to even check it out and listen to the music because they thought that's something that I don't want to listen to. So we were aware of the fact that we needed a different name.
It was Kalle and Charlie who finally convinced us to change the name.
We're, yes, are we 86 or 87, and we're in Münster with Kalle Trapp for the first time. So try to describe the excitement of being in a real studio and actually doing it for real for the first time.
Everything during the production appeared so huge and professional to us because we were used to demo recordings, and when we went to Kalle's place, he had, nowadays I would say, a regular mixing console, but back then it looked gigantic to us.
Yeah. Mm.
Basically, we learned everything at that point. For example, you started with a real sound check, which took maybe half a day or so, you know, and that was something quite unusual because when you go to a demo studio recording, you just go in and do a proper sound check, like 30 minutes, 20 minutes, and then you're ready to go.
In the beginning, I wasn't used, for example, to change any kind of instrument on my drums, you know, because the producer tells you, or the engineer tells you, no, that snare drum doesn't sound that good. Let's change it to another one. What? But my one is tuned like that. I can just play on this snare, you know, because the other one maybe would have been down-tuned a little bit and stuff like that, you know. I can't play on this because the rebound is not there, and just stuff like that. It's totally new. That was really pretty fun.
When working with a producer, you don't have a choice. If he says, well, it is not good enough, you have to go in and do it the second time, third time, fourth time. However, you know,
We had no
That's
clue. I mean,
sometimes-
we didn't know anything about miking up a guitar amplifier or miking up a drum kit or anything. So we had to trust
That's the point.
on what he wanted to go for, because we just said, okay, that's my Marshall, that's my guitar, that's my cabinet, that's all I have, so I'm good to go. And you set up the Marshall to sound like you normally had it sound like, and then he was like, no, we had to scoop all the mids and we have to do this and take out distortion and blah blah blah, whatever, and now you can play. And we played and it was like sounding weird.
Yeah.
But he said, no, in the mix everything will sound fine, because when the guitars come together...
we fix it in the mix.
Yeah, we the big
right.
rock and roll line, yeah.
Number three.
But we were told, you know, he was the producer, he was the experienced guy, and we were just doing our first album, so we had no fucking clue, and all we could do was like say, okay, if you say so, then most likely it will be right.
What
It
we
wasn't.
did not really realize is that he wasn't a metal producer.
Even though he did lots of metal stuff back then.
I know.
But at the same time, I mean, you were working with a producer for the first time, and how much of his input did you bring with you in your songwriting to the next album? Did you feel that he improved some things within the songs and put it in
Some
certain
things, of
directions?
course,
that were
like
good?
like Tormund said, we started rehearsing with click track, which was a big improvement to have a steady timing. And by that steady timing, we needed to play the guitars more accurate, of course. We became a little bit tighter, not much, but a tiny little bit tighter we were. Hansi, he knew we will have choirs in the chorus parts. We had this in mind already when we composed the new songs, that there would be choirs, which was a little bit different way of thinking. I worked out my guitar solos for the first time, because before it was more like, yeah, played them a little bit different here and then, so what? But then I saw, okay, in the studio maybe 3 or 4 notes will be missing, because it was not really designed. My worst experience in the first album recording, that I was missing time. Kalle gave me 1 shot to play a solo, and I remember I had a big fight with him after I played the Majesty solo. I had 1 shot, maybe 2, and I knew I didn't reach my performance that I had in the rehearsal room. I knew I would maybe need 3-4 more takes to be really state of the art, but he didn't give me the 3 shots. He said, that was your time, you had to play it. Next time be better prepared, but that's what we take now. It's good enough it's good enough for rock and roll, was his. Yeah, it's good enough for rock and roll. And I was so pissed, I said, but I can play it better. And he said, yeah, next album, next time, but not now. From that moment, I changed really my attitude to compose solos. I really tried to work them out and know what I play and rehearse them a little bit before, that if I would have only 2 shots again, that they would come out better.
Talking about the lyrics also, was it clear from the beginning that, well, leave the lyrics to Hansi, he will have to take care of it, or did any of the other guys had any intentions to actually write lyrics from the beginning?
I think Hansi was the only one who could speak a proper English. Maybe Markus was good
You
in
should have
English.
helped me.
He was good in
I was
English.
checking things,
and
but-
he was
Yeah.
good in English as well.
It didn't matter.
No, it didn't really matter. I mean, he was writing the lyrics, and I can say, only speak for myself, but I never had any intentions of writing lyrics, because he had to sing it, and, you know, he had to be behind whatever he's singing. And whenever he wrote lyrics before we went to the studio, you know, we were going through them, seeing if there were any mistakes that we might find. Sometimes we found something, sometimes we didn't.
Ignored it.
But, you know, lyrics have always been his territory.
But what I recall is that when we did the demos, there was one point when I recommended The Lord of the Rings to you as a book, just to read. I believe it was you who came up with the idea, you know, in saying, well, let's try to do one song about it. And yeah, I said, well, it's a good idea. And we started working on Majesty back then. And, you know, I digged into the Lord of the Rings stuff again, because I read it probably 6 months prior to Andre, or a few months more. And I felt it tempting to write about that topic, and I just discovered my passion due to that. And then it became natural, and we agreed on, you know, having more songs about it. I came up with the idea for Run for the Night and did these lyrics, which are loosely related, not loosely, they're strongly related, but it's not so obvious than in other cases. And as you said with the instrumentals, even they got names, you know, after The Lord of the Rings, because we all have been thrilled. You knew it, you know,
Yeah.
you were a pundit, even you
Heard about it.
you liked the idea, you know.
Possible.
I remember, you know, you said, well, I never read a book like this, but, you know, I like the idea. The story is fantasy, cool.
Yeah.
And so we were, you know, on the same page there. And as Markus said, I think it's when doing vocal melody lines, I sometimes create a certain magic in just playing along with words. And sometimes the magic of the words is even more important than, you know, the later on message. So some you can restore somehow, and others, even if you try, you will never get there. And even if they do not really fit into the complete context of a song, I stick to that. That, you know, up to nowadays, that sometimes happens. Not too often, but if it's the case, then this is good. And from that point on, I also think it is easier for me to express my own words than the words of others. I made that experience when working with other artists who, you know, just told me what to sing. And it basically works if I get a spiritual connection, to say so, with the guy who composed it. But in general, it's far, far easier than, you know, singing the words of other people.
At that time we had, I remember especially, we had lots of discussions about all themes you can imagine. We were just sitting in the rehearsal room, drinking some beers or wine and talking all evening. So we figured out that maybe political themes wouldn't be the right choice for us to go. I mean, I was never a fan of political lyrics so much. Because even in the band there can be different opinions, and how can you bring this in together? It can be very difficult, and I like the way of thinking that with a fantasy theme we would have something more neutral.
And that was actually something how any of us could maybe influence the lyrics by recommending him a book that he might not know. Like if I read something, I could tell him, hey,
Eric,
check
for
this one.
example. Yeah.
Was it Eric?
Yeah. I read Corum and you read Eric, and you said,
yeah.
well, check
was
out
also
Eric.
later
then.
Eric van Lustbader, the thing that led
Yeah,
to...
that was killer. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember also that we talked about it one day, that we said we don't want to write about, is it social critical lyrics, because almost every band does it.
Yeah, that
and you
was-
said,
was-
"Wow, I really
It was a
don't want
trend,
this."
right?
It was
It
a
was
trend,
trend,
right.
and we didn't want to be trendy.
Yeah. But I also think the music dictates the lyrics.
Yeah.
And this is very narrating music, and I do storytelling.
If the melodies are so positive and bring so much positive energy, you cannot sing about the world going down. It wouldn't make sense.
Well, even though we did things like that later on, you know, in a sort of lyrical and poetical and philosophical way. It happened, but the main reason for music is to please and entertain people, and to give them, that is at least my impression, give them space for interpretation
Yes.
and inspiration. Easy as that.
So with the upcoming re-release to Follow the Blind, what can you tell us about the packaging?
Well, we try to keep all the re-releases equal. We try to pay justice to the past. So the original CD will be featured, as well as a new remixing with a perfect sounding. As for the packaging, we decided to go both worlds as well. So you will have the original cover artwork, but we also asked Felipe Machado to come up with some additional front artworks to comfort the new mixing. So you will have two different artworks, to say so, which will be featured in the most accurate way. It's quite impressive for me to see. They all will be released on vinyl as well. For the vinyl version, we decided to go for the remix because that sounds a little more impressive. I think people will really dig into it and enjoy what we have come up with.